Have you ever wanted or needed a bag for multi-purpose use, or a bag that you don't need to worry about your important items such as your phone or laptop? Then Knack Bags are the bag for you. Knack Bags are your everyday bag for work, travel, and leisure. Knack Bags come with a fully padded interior to keep your electronics safe. With its sleek design, organized interior, and professional appearance, it looks great at work or on the street and expands for more capacity when you need it.
Get a Knack bag today and stop worrying about how you look when carrying your life essentials. Use the code GAME and for a limited time, get a free TSA-approved lock with purchase. Just add the TSA lock to your cart with your Knack bag of choice and use the code GAME at the checkout to get it for free.
This is Game On, discussing the biggest games and all the latest sports news with Johnny Montalbano and Hank Indictor on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
It's showtime, folks. Episode 5 of Game On, presented by Knack here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Johnny Montalbano, Hank Indictor with you as we discuss, well, we've got a lot to discuss here in the world of sports. We've got baseball being back in its opening week. We've got NBA. We've got the play-in tournament getting ready to start. We've got news regarding the Lakers, a post-mortem on the Knicks. We've got hockey even to discuss. Hank and myself both big Ranger fans, so we'll get into a little bit of that. The Masters concluded with Tiger Woods being back and Scottie Scheffler, one of the hottest golfer right now on the land. But first, Hank, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. You know, there's a lot to discuss, so I'm excited about this, and it's good to be back. And it's crazy. It's already episode number 5 of the show. I mean, it goes by really, really quick. We're a third of the way through April. It comes and goes really, really quick, but I'm doing great, Hank, and it's good to be back with you again. And of course, folks, several ways to get involved with the show. You can tweet the show at GameOnETB, Facebook.com at GameOnETB, also Instagram GameOn_ETB as well. And as I said, we have a lot to get to throughout the course of the episode. We'll get into the basketball, we'll get to the hockey, we'll get into the golf, all that good stuff. But Hank, I think we got to lead things off here with a little baseball, and we'll get into the Mets in just a moment. But I think we got to get it going here with the little Yankees, because not only is there a lot of discussion with them on the field, but off of it as well. I mean, you know, you went to opening day, and I want to get your thoughts about that in just a second. But actually, starting with that, you know, you were going to the game, and news broke probably an hour or two before first pitch that Aaron Judge and the Yanks could not agree onto an extension before the season started. And then you hear the news from Cashman, and I thought this was pretty interesting that he actually came out and described the terms of it. It was going to be 7 years, $213.5 million. So really, it was more like an 8-year, $230 million extension when you consider the arbitration and stuff. But you factor in that news, and then you head into opening day. What do you think? What were your thoughts when the news came down that Judge was not going to be extended?
So let me take you through what was going through my mind that day as I was on my way to the stadium.
Absolutely, please do.
So this was one of those days where I actually drove to the stadium. Normally, I take the green line from Ossining to Yankees East 153rd by train, but today I drove. I got there pretty early, like 10:30 a.m. Right as I parked my car, my phone started blowing up, either because it was no service down in that underground garage or it was because the news happened. I don't know. I walk up, I turn it on, and I see all this stuff about Aaron Judge, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Because once I got inside, once I got into Billy's, I met up with one of my friends, and like, I'd found out that it was all public. To say I was livid was probably one of the understatements of the year, because honestly, looking at this contract, I thought it was pretty fair. 7 years, $213.5 million for a guy who you're essentially making the face of your franchise, and he says no. And then all of a sudden I hear the comments saying it's disappointing. I was hoping to be a Yankee for life. No, You wanted more money. You know it. But the fact that like he rejected it isn't really what bothers me the most. The fact that all these figures came out publicly right at the start of the season, it stings, because now you're going to get to the point where you're going to be hearing a lot of fans turning on Aaron Judge for not producing if he strikes out in, like, say, the bottom of the ninth or hits into a double play with runners in scoring position. It's just it stinks, and then you're going to have so many people calling for him to just leave, and this is not going to, I don't think it's going to be a fun season, like, watching him, like, with all that in mind.
Hank, we're 4 or 5 games into the season, and you're already seeing that happen. You know, the game.
Yes,
last night against the Blue Jays.
Yeah, I was just about to say, last night there were so many people like turning on Aaron Judge. They were booing him by the end of the game. I'm like, this is not going to end well.
Yeah, I think that's crazy. I think it's crazy. You know, when they were booing Stanton 4 games into the season, even in his first year as a Bomber. Yeah, I'll tell you this. I saw those figures and I couldn't believe it, because I was thinking along the lines of like 5 years and $200 million, which that would have been absurd as well. But you're talking about a guy here that's 30 years old, you know, who had a very good year last year. I mean, let's be honest, without Judge and Stanton, the Yanks probably don't even make the wild card game last year. But, you know, this is a guy that's, you know, been talked about a while. He's the face of your franchise. And, you know, it kind of goes hand in hand with all these other contracts that have been going out throughout baseball. And it makes me think, did he turn it down because of the money, or did he turn it down because of the length? Because if we've seen that now, you know, with Freddie Freeman, the Braves offered him 5 years and $140 million, and he wanted a sixth year, and the Braves would not go that far, and the Dodgers did. So it makes you wonder: did Judge want talk about maybe an 8 or even a 9-year deal? And you can't do that if you're the Yankees. You know, this is a guy that's 30 years old, and you know he came up pretty late. You know, he spent 3 years in college, so it's not like he came up as a 21-year-old. He came up in his mid-20s. He's played 6 full years. You know, he's had injury problems, but what he had, you know, an unbelievable 2017 rookie season, a magical one. You know, he had a very good year last year, but otherwise his years have been really injury plagued. So the way that he's built and stuff, I don't know if you can go that long and that far with him. And
you shouldn't.
Yeah, and you know, you hate to say this because they are the Yankees, but it's really the truth. Money's an issue. They are not willing to go that far. Money's the issue. Prospects are an issue. You've seen that with them not making deals for players that you thought you would. But you know, money is a factor here, because they're right now paying Giancarlo Stanton over $30 million a year. They are paying Garrett Cole over $30 million a year. They took on the entire salary of Josh Donaldson at age 36. He's making $23 million each of the next couple of seasons. So money here is a factor. And so when you look at all this, I mean, $30.5 million for a guy at age 30, I mean, I don't know what he's looking at. And it makes you wonder now, the signs have been pointing to that this could be Judge's last season in the Bronx.
Oh, yeah, I think the writing is definitely on the wall, because if he at this point like wants an 8-year or a 9-year contract, at this point I'm just gonna say, you know what, kick rocks. You're on your way out of here. Like, I'm not committing that type of money to someone who, make no mistake, the injuries that he's had are freak injuries. Getting hit on the wrist and an oblique strain, that's not what I would describe for somebody that's injury prone. But at the same time, if you're wanting that and you've had a history of missing games, that's a major red flag in my eyes.
I just don't know what else he's really looking for here. I mean, is he looking for more than $30.5 million a year, like the Correas are getting?
Or maybe he wants like an opt-out somewhere in one of those contracts. I don't know.
Well, I mean, he's 30 years old though, so his opt-out would come out at age 33, and he's gonna go for more money possibly. I don't see that. I think when you're looking at this, you're looking at probably the years, and maybe he wants a 9th year, which would be insane to think about, but it makes me think that there are other teams that would go that far. I'm thinking, you know, he's a California guy. I don't think it would be the Dodgers, but you could never rule them out the way they dish out contracts. They're not fearful of the money or the length with these deals.
There's also talk about the Giants, because that's his hometown team, because he grew up in the Bay Area.
I was going to bring up the Giants, and then I'm thinking close to home here in the New York area. I'm thinking of 2 other teams, and I know you're going to think I'm crazy. I think the Mets are definitely in play because Steve Cohen's not scared to give out money. He could go a 9th or 10th year, and they could say, "Oh, we're going to stick it to the Yankees here and do this," which I think would be crazy to do. And I'm looking at the Red Sox even as a possibility. I know that sounds nuts, but I could see him going up there as well if they give him a 9-year deal. And again, we've seen this now in baseball, and you can't say that the Yankees are not, going full out for this. It reminds me of the Robinson Cano contract. They were offering him, I believe it was 8 for $200, and the Mariners went to a 10-year deal. So that makes me he went 10 years, 240 over there to Seattle at the time. And I'm thinking we're looking along those lines here. So Judge is taking a big risk here because let's say he does miss a significant amount of time this year. He still has, and here's another thing too. He's still waiting to hear about his arbitration number because he was going for 21 and the Yanks offered 17. And with the lockout this year, that case isn't going to be heard until June. So you have that factoring in as well. But this is a big gamble. And it makes me think that barring something crazy here, I think Judge is playing his last season in the Bronx.
And yeah, I'm glad you pointed it out because I'm starting to think he played himself big time. He very well could have played himself. That was, again, 7 years, $213.5 million. That's a very fair contract. I would have been more than fine if he had accepted that.
Yeah, and when I saw those numbers come up, I was like, wow. I mean, what else does he want? Does he want more money? Does he want more years? We've seen now some of these players, they've wanted more years. We've even seen some players, they'll take less amount of time with the opt-outs, like Correa as well. But we've seen, like Freeman, we saw Corey Seager take 10. We saw Marcus Semien get 8. And they were on their north side of 32. So that's maybe what Judge is looking at. And I'll tell you, if you're the Yankees, you can't do this. 30 seems to be that age, whether you're a position player or a pitcher. We've talked about it with the Mets with DeGrom. And I've made the point on this show that Jacob DeGrom, if you're the Mets, if he's indeed going to opt out, you cannot bring him back. And I think Aaron Judge, if he's going to want 8 or 9 years, you can't bring him back.
No.
And I've said, too, I was on, our other show, and I've said on this show, too, I said even on Empty the Bench here on this podcast network, that the Yankees needed to look into getting rid of one of these 3 big power bats they had, whether it was Gallo, Stanton, or Judge. And you know what? I think Judge is going to be – it's looking like right now that Judge is going to be the odd man out. And the problem is going to be is you're not going to get anything for him because unless the Yankees are totally out by the July 31st – it's the August 2nd deadline this year. And I don't believe they're going to be out of it. I think this team's good enough to be in it throughout the entire year, even though I've said they have their flaws. You're not getting anything for Judge. So they're going to let him walk. And you're going to look into these other big contracts that they have as being a reason why. And that kind of stings when you have a homegrown guy that you thought was going to spend his entire career in pinstripes.
Yeah, it really is a tough pill to swallow if he leaves, especially after that whole ordeal that went down early in the season. But we'll see. I'll try to enjoy at least one more season with him. But as I said, with the way things happen early on and with him getting booed, this really isn't going to end well.
Yeah, and it makes me want to bring up another point here real quick before we get into the opening series against the Red Sox. I don't know if you saw before the season, and this also happened before the season started too. Anthony Rizzo made some interesting comments regarding longevity and the big contracts been going throughout. So Rizzo had said that you see Freddie Freeman isn't on the Braves anymore. There's no loyalty in this game. Anthony, first of all, he's not a Cub anymore. You thought that he'd be a Cub his entire career, so maybe he's coming from along those lines. But I'm sorry, Anthony. Didn't the Braves offer Freddie Freeman 5 years and $140 million? Look at the Yankees here. Didn't they offer Aaron Judge reportedly 7 years and $213.5 million? That's not loyalty? I mean, you've got to be kidding me.
I think he means loyalty among the players and wanting to stay with their teams. But yeah, no, with that part, I agree with you.
Well, don't be asking for these insane, unrealistic contracts. I mean, Judge is 30. Freddie Freeman's 32. And I'm not saying they don't deserve this. I mean, look, get every last dollar that you can. But don't tell me there's no loyalty when the teams are offering, these big contracts and you're going out there and asking for more, being very greedy. And that's what's going on here. Look, Freddie Freeman wanted a 6th year. He got a 6th year. Aaron Judge now is telling you he wants more than 7 or 8 years. I mean, can you imagine some team goes out there and gives Judge 5 years and $200 million? And if he turns that down, then what exactly is he telling you he wants? He wants longevity. He doesn't even want. It's not even just about the money; it's about the longevity, since these contracts are all guaranteed. So I can't be listening to Anthony Rizzo tell me about there's no loyalty in baseball when clearly, the teams are offering the years and the money, but the players are saying it's still not enough.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna agree to disagree with you on that. I do agree that there's loyalty among the front office. I think if it's this loyalty, I think it's really more because the players would want to leave said team. But even then, with that being said, I'll agree with you to the extent that, the players are within their rights to ask for this money, no?
Yes.
But with that being said, they also have to realize that if they want to stay, then, they got some, I think they have to look at the terms that the GM wants. So I think that's what Anthony Rizzo is saying. But that's a really tricky thing though,
Yeah, that is for sure. Now let's get to the on the field stuff because, an hour and a half after the news with Judge comes out, you get to opening day and you're there at the stadium and, Garrett Cole's taking the mound and the Red Sox, before you really can, sit down comfortably and take it all in, are out to a quick 3-0 lead. But, the Yanks do come right back in that bottom half of the opening inning and get a 2-run shot from Rizzo to get on the board. And, they rally and, give him credit, because as much as they relied on the home run ball early, I thought one of the great things about this game on opening day, besides the comeback win, was the fact that, they get a sacrifice fly to tie it from Torres, and they get an RBI single up the middle from Donaldson. And of course, wouldn't it not be opening day and, make me look crazy when we were talking about the Donaldson trade, and look at what happens on opening day. Josh Donaldson drives in Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. So the two new Yankees contribute on the winning run there. And
I mean, we might as well start producing their new Yankeeographies now.
Well, I don't know about that because
no.
Because I'm already seeing social media go crazy about Falefa, and it looks like Falefa and Aaron Hicks are going to become the 2022 version of Gary Sanchez on Yankee Twitter. So the Yanks do take 2 out of 3 against the Red Sox to start, and then they have a tough loss last night with that good young kid for Toronto, Alek Manoah. So they start out 2-2. So, little early reaction here to the first 4 games of the season. Hank, what do you think?
So yeah, no, I'm not really overreacting or underreacting. My opinion on the Yankees is pretty much the same. The comeback on opening day, great to witness, especially live at Yankee Stadium. The place was electric, by the way. I do want to say, the reason I went early, sorry if I'm going off a little tangent, was
That's okay.
If you go to the whole neighborhood that's right across the street, the Stan Sports Bar, the Billy's, and all those stores, it becomes such a block party. I wanted to take a look at that atmosphere and take it all in. It was so cool. And as far as the game itself, yeah, that was definitely one of those games where the Yankees were relying on the home run. I was glad to see them get a sac fly and that game-winning single by Donaldson, because that's a type of comeback that I've seen in years past that doesn't usually happen. And then you had that win against the Red Sox in the second game where, by the way, what's that rookie's name? Number 97, the relief pitcher. I'm going to butcher it. Italian kid.
Oh, and the Yanks?
Yes. Marinaccio.
Marinaccio.
That guy saved the game in the second game, I have to say. I know that they got the tying home run from Anthony Rizzo and then Giancarlo Stanton, but remember, he was pitching in a jam during that game. If the Red Sox get a hit or two, that's a very different game. And I've seen the Yankees win down 4-0. That's when they start to press even harder for that long ball. And trust me, I have been on record saying probably only a million times, whether it be here or whether it be on Review and Preview, that the home run or nothing approach is an approach that I do not like. So my opinion is really essentially the same. I think the Yankees will still be pretty solid, but I'm not going to go planning my ticker tape parade just yet, or maybe even at all this year.
Yeah, and going back to what you were saying about that pitcher, you have to remember also Anthony Rizzo went to the mound to calm him down and, showed good leadership there. And I think that's what also helped Rob as well was that mound visit from Rizzo. But, Yeah,
I
I
agree.
agree. I agree with you regarding the Yanks' first 4 games. I mean, look, they're going to be among the top 5 this year, I would say, in strikeouts and home runs. So you're going to see the good and you're going to see the bad with them, and that's what it's been. But Rizzo's been off to a good start. Stan's been off to a good start. The pitching hasn't been that bad. I mean, I think Severino gave you a good start to start. The Cole thing was a little concerning that he only went 4 innings, and 68 pitches. But that goes along the lines of what I've been saying all along, in that these pitchers didn't have all that amount of time to really get stretched out. So you're going to probably see more pitchers do this, and probably more pitcher injuries, because these guys are not really fully stretched out because of the 99-day lockout. So I would not panic about that. I think the fans are going a little bit too harsh on Aaron Hicks. I mean, this is a guy that's probably played one full season in the last 3 years, whether it was the lockout or the injuries or whatnot. And here's what I would say about that too. You take Aaron Hicks out, who's playing center field for the Yankees? I mean, are we going to go down the route where you're going to put Judge in center field and you're going to have to play Stanton in right, or move Joey Gallo out of left? You're not going to do that. So, Hicks, to me, look, he has not played a full season in 4 years. You got to give him a chance. So I am already seeing people go crazy about that and about Falefa at short. You have to remember, Falefa, as much as he played shortstop in Texas his last year, he's not really a shortstop. He's more of a third baseman. So I think we have to relax on that mark for now. But, I mean, they've got – I like the fact that, they're going to have rotating guys in the infield, because LeMahieu is going to play multiple positions. You're going to have Torres over at second, and maybe he can go to short and give him a day off. I like Marwin Gonzalez being on this team, because he gives you that versatility that I feel like every team needs. So, early on 2-2, you're seeing them that they're going to slug their way the wins, and then they're going to strike out a lot. So they're going to frustrate you a lot in that regard. And that's part of the reason why I don't like the way this team is constructed. I think they are a playoff team, like I said in our preview show last week. But they are going to, they're going to be games this year that are going to be like last night against Toronto, where they get shut out and they strike out a ton. That's what's going to happen. So, but they'll also have games where they slug their way to wins, like they did in the first 2 games against Boston. So, it's going to be one of those kinds of years. And let's also remember too, Hank, before we wrap this up with the Yankees, they do this almost every year. They get off to slow starts. It takes them really until about June to really get things going. I think the only year, if I can remember right, out of the last several that they've gotten off to a hot start was the COVID shortened season of 2020. They had a hot start, but then they had a rough middle. Right. But they do this every year. They get off to slow starts, and look, it's only 4 games in, but
this is the typical cycle of the Yankees. It's like you start off slow in April, get your kinks out of the way. Then I would say, I don't know about June. I think it's either late May or early June is when they really start to pick it up and start winning. But yeah, you're right. They do well then, and then once you get to August or September, they'll go to the playoffs, and then October, once they face the better pitching, they get exposed.
I'll tell you, look at that Blue Jays offense though, and I tell you, they are so scary. They're
so balanced too. Like you have Springer in there with Guerrero and Bichette. Like, these aren't guys that like try to hit for power that are home run or nothing. Guerrero's got a 330 batting average or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's scary there. And then, like I said, they've got the best home field advantage in baseball, so they're going to use that to their advantage as well. But I think the Yanks, they'll be in it. And again, I don't really look at my first real step point is to see where a team is in a season is Memorial Day. I think that's the first. When you get to Memorial Day, that's about a third of the way in. You can assess where the team is at that point, and then really see where they go from there. But first 4 games in, you like the power that you've seen from Stanton and from Rizzo, and we'll see. Rest of the team. It's a process, and I think again, as I said, I think they're a playoff team. I think they'll win 90 games like they normally do. But it'll be what it comes down to in October. But we'll find out as the season progresses. Now, as far as the Mets go, they had a good start against the Nationals. Whether it was Scherzer starting well, even McGill on opening day, McGill gave you 5 to 6 strong innings, then Scherzer gives you 6, and then you also have Carrasco. The first turn through the rotation for the Mets wasn't that bad. Now, last night, Taijuan Walker only gives you 2 innings because he leaves with a shoulder issue. And you look at this team so far. Now, they, unlike the Yankees, have not hit for power so far the first few games of the year. They've gotten it with more contact hitting. But it was a tough last loss against the Nationals, and then last night against the Phillies, they jumped. They have a 4-0 lead going to the bottom of the eighth, and then that Phillies offense, which this is the thing why I said that the Mets are not a 90-win team this year, because I don't like that Mets bullpen, and I love the Phillies offense, and you saw that in the eighth inning last night. But early on with the Mets here, first week in, what are your thoughts, Hank?
Again, my opinion with them hasn't really changed either. I mean, obviously they took 3 out of 4 from the Nationals, which pretty much was what they were supposed to do. Washington is a team that you're expecting to be right at the bottom of the standings. Granted, the 4th game, they probably should have won that one too, but it is what it is. Anytime you take 3 out of 4, you would settle for that. But after that loss against Philly, yeah, if you're a Mets fan, I think you do have every right to start panicking, because losing Taijuan Walker, and this was a guy who you didn't really have as very high. And one thing you and I both said was their pitching has gotten deeper. But now that you don't have him and Jacob deGrom, that's another scary thought. No?
Yes. I mean, because it does test the depth. I mean, Taijuan Walker, the first half of last season was fantastic. He did struggle the second half of the year, but you didn't need him to be your second or third starter going into this season. I actually, Carrasco giving you the start that he did looked pretty good. So it does lengthen the rotation. I mean, as I said, I think short term, the injury to DeGrom is not going to affect them. I think longer term it will. And again, I don't think you see Jacob deGrom until after Memorial Day at the earliest. If everything goes right in these next 4 weeks and he doesn't suffer any setback or doesn't get cleared. So, but it's that, when you have that and then the lineup, you look at it, I mean, they've got some good production so far, but they're still, Dominic Smith, who I know everybody likes, and they're still trying to find him a chance to be in every day. And, they're a team that's still figuring pieces out, whether it's, Cano, the DH spot. I actually thought one of the cool things about this past week with the Mets, and I mean, it seems very minor, but you look at it, there was a chance to pinch hit for Cano with J.D. Davis in one of the games with, we've talked about the whole analytical thing, and Buck didn't do it, and I like that. You got to give your guys a chance against right-handers or Cano against lefties. Now, you cannot always face the opposite end here. So I think Buck's done pretty well. Like I said, I don't like this bullpen, and that's a concerning thing. You even saw Trevor May leave with arm fatigue. And I mean, that's the crazy thing too. And this is what I've been talking about with this whole lockout. I mean, you have guys right now that are dealing with shoulder issues, and dead arms already a week into the season. I mean, that you had to expect that though, because these guys were getting ramped up too quick. So, yeah, I mean, would I be concerned with the Mets? As I said, I've been concerned regarding their bullpen, but that game last night definitely did sting. You jump out, you had a chance to really add on. You're up 4-0 in the bottom of the eighth, and you give up 5 runs the way they do.
And to the Phillies too. That's not definitely going to be a tough pill for them to swallow, but
yeah,
I think they have a chance to be fine. But again, at the same time, I'm still not going to tell you, I'm still not going to tell you that they're a 90-win team. And I'm certainly not going to tell you that they're winning the NL East, because I know the Braves have gotten off. Look at the Braves. They've gotten off to a rough start too. They got clobbered by the Washington Nationals. Yeah,
I did see that too. Yeah, that was a little wild. But as I said, it's been a full season. We got a full season here. But yeah, and by the way, the back page of the New York Post today telling me same old Mets. I mean, guys, we're 4 games into the season. How can you tell me 4 or 5 games into the season? You can't tell me same old Mets. Why? Because we got pitchers that are hurt. Every team has injuries in baseball. All right. I mean, so come on. I mean, you want to tell me same old Mets because they misdiagnose injuries and stuff like that and stuff? Maybe. But, I mean, come on. We're 5 games into the season with them. And that, again, we're overreacting here, but all we can go on is what we've seen in the first few games of the year. So would I say I'm concerned with the Mets? No. Would I say they're matching up to expectations? Yeah. I mean, look, they took, like you said, Hank, they took 3 out of 4 against the Nationals. The Nationals are going to only be, in my opinion, a 70-win team this year. So they're going to lose 90 games. I mean, you take 3 out of 4 every time against them, you'll be fine. If both the Mets and the Yankees win 6 and 4 every 10 games, they'll both win 96 games each. And I think you have to look at that, a 10-game stretch. If you can go 6 and 4, then I think you're going to be just fine. So, first 5 games in, we'll see what happens with the Mets. But two things real quick with the Mets and the Yankees. I forgot to mention this with the Yankee thing. I want to talk about this real quick. Since we're on the Mets, let's keep it here because this happened earlier. The Apple TV Plus game. I mean, look, there's a lot of reasons not to like it. Number one, it's not on your regular TV. Number two, your home announcers, Gary, Keith, and Ron are not there. And look, I'm not going to go bashing the announcers. I think Melanie Newman actually is very good. The announcers, to me, if I'm gonna list you 10 problems with the Apple TV Plus game from Friday night, the announcers are going to be number 11. They are not the issue. Now, you like the local announcers. That's what baseball's become. I get that, but I don't need to be. Having. I've seen people they are having problems getting the game at first. That's a problem. And I don't need to see this reach-based probability or hit probability, walk probability on the bottom right of the screen the entire game. You've got to be kidding me. That is why things like that, these kind of stats, these kind of analytics are one of thousands of reasons why this game is struggling. And like I said, and Hank, you said it, I said it, Nick said it, we probably all have said this. Mm-hmm. How does this Apple TV Plus package promote the game?
It doesn't. I mean, if you're going to make it harder for people to watch, that makes things worse.
Bars and restaurants have to adjust as well. You know, it's not like, I'm going to go out to a bar and watch it. They don't necessarily all have smart TVs where they can get this too. So there's just so many things with it that were a problem. And it's one game. I'm not getting the Apple TV Plus package. And again, the announcers are not the problem. Look, maybe the coolest thing one of the coolest things early on in the season was in the Apple TV Plus package, the second game of that Friday night doubleheader. You had Jeremy Pena's parents being interviewed by Heidi Watney, and the kid hits a home run and hits his first major league home run. That was pretty cool. But again, I don't need to be watching that. And like I said, one of the other problems with this, one of the many problems, I mean, we could spend the rest of the show on this. Why are you putting this Apple TV Plus package on a Friday? I was out with friends on Friday night. I'm not putting the game on my Apple iPhone. I'm not. I'm sorry. It's on a Friday, especially down here in South Carolina when a lot of people come down for vacations and stuff. They're not putting the game on a Friday. So
they probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's a problem. Not having your home announcers. People have to get used to different announcers. The fact that the announcers, like I said, and they were the least of the problems. But they're talking about Golden Girls and stuff like that during the game. They're not showing the scrum that happened between the Mets and the Nationals. How the Mets got hit multiple times over the weekend. It just looked like they were totally out of sorts.
How do you talk about Golden Girls during Mets Nationals? It's ridiculous.
Well, when you have time to pass, and I said this too, and I even said this to Nick before. There are a lot of broadcasts now that are getting used to the 3-person booth. It doesn't always work. Gary, Keith, and Ron do it great.
They're fantastic.
Kay and back in the day, Singleton and Cott, that worked. Him with O'Neill and Cone, I think that works. I think actually the Sunday night broadcast now with Ravage, Cone, and Perez, I think that works. But 3-person booths to me just don't work, especially if you're going to have a sideline reporter too. I don't think you want to go that far as well. So, yeah, so many things with that. And then, you got the Yankees having 21 games on Amazon Prime. What if you don't have Amazon Prime? What are you going to do there? Then they're playing a Peacock game on a Sunday morning in June. Can you imagine, Hank, you going to Yankee Stadium for an 11:30 in the morning game on a Sunday in June?
Oh my gosh!
It's going to be reality when they play the Tigers.
That's so. I don't even know what to say. That the idea even going to a game and in the morning, like that's terrible timing. Like 1:00 makes sense, especially if it's a weekend.
I don't mind. I mean, look, somebody like me who's up at 3:00 in the morning most days. I mean, I'm fine with that. But a lot of people,
generally speaking, I'm okay with getting there because, like I told you, I got to the stadium at like 10:30 for opening day. But I mean, that's pretty much a holiday. Like, who wouldn't want to get there earlier at that point, But if it's for a random game against the Tigers that like may or may not mean much in the grand scheme of things, then no.
Yeah. And then as far as the Yankees go, they had the initial KayRod cast on Sunday night where you have Michael Kay and Alex Rodriguez on ESPN2. Almost very they're trying to make it like the Manning cast. See, I didn't think this was going to work too because the Manning cast, you have action always happening. You can bring in guests and stuff. If you saw in the beginning of this, and I did watch a little bit of it because I wanted to give it a try. I like Kay, and I think KayRod as a broadcaster, when he's on Fox or when he was on ESPN was fine. I mean, I don't really have an issue with that. They were doing more play-by-play in the beginning, and that's the thing too. Because since there's not a lot of action, and then you also had this scare with Montgomery in the beginning, it really tested them out right out of the gate. And then, they bring on other guests like Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds. So they have like a steroid fest right there along with A-Rod. Yeah, you know what? First one, but let's put it this way. If I'm watching the baseball game, I'm not going into that. I'm just not. I'm going to watch the Sunday Night Crew because I think Carl Ravitch is great. I've always liked him, and I had no problem with Cone. And I think Cone's great, and Perez is fine. So it's going to take a while. ESPN's been trying to figure out this whole Sunday night booth thing ever since John Miller and Joe Morgan. But I think they've got that right. But I don't know this KayRod cast, especially they're not going to have it every week. I don't know how successful it's going to be.
No, yeah, it just sounds like another ripoff, basically, the whole KayRod cast. And as I said, I didn't really get to watch it. I saw little snippets of it, and the parts that I saw were okay. But I don't know if a KayRod would really work the way that Eli and Peyton bantering with somebody else during a football game would, because like you said, there's more action in a football game. Baseball is just a real 9-inning game. I think they're trying too hard to get too radical, but that it's just only making things worse.
I think baseball's trying too hard to try and get fans back, and they're trying to grow the game, and they're doing it in the wrong ways, whether it's Apple TV Plus, forcing people to get that, forcing people to buy Amazon Prime if they don't have it. I mean, you're a Yankee fan. You've got 1/8 of your games this season on Amazon Prime. And the whole Peacock thing, a lot of people are being turned away from that because the games are on early. So there's that. They see all these optics of what's going on with baseball. It's just not looking great. And then how about this one nugget before we switch gears, Hank? How about the tweet that came down from Nesbitt earlier about Rob Manfred giving the players Bose headphones?
Oh, what? You're not going to give anything to the fans who had to sit through a whole lockout?
What about the fans? What do we get? We get Apple TV, we get KayRod Cast, we get Amazon Prime, we get games that we can't watch, and higher ticket prices, concessions, parking. We get a full season, and I'm going to watch all of my players probably make an IL trip at some point because of the shortened lockout season, and I'm going to watch extra inning games with the ghost runners back on second base. I'm going to watch next year. I'm going to watch players that are not going to be able to shift. You see guys that are actually trying to bunt against the shift and get on base. You see them doing that. Let the shift stay. What do the fans get out of this? The players get headphones. The fans get nothing except more headache and frustration and a reminder about how terrible the damn lockout was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!" I mean, Rob Manfred, good old Rob Manfred,
worst.
Good old Rob Manfred. That's him right there. Good old
Rob Manfred.
Oh my gosh! He's so bad.
And by the way, for the record, I've been complaining about his efforts or lack thereof to grow the game long before the lockout, and even before, say, we had the whole COVID situation in 2020.
If you ask the average American about Shohei Ohtani, do you think they would know about him?
I mean, probably not, depending on how much baseball they watch, but we're going to assume that they don't, so yeah, probably not. Which is ridiculous because this guy is a good pitcher and a good hitter. How many of those have you been seeing over the past, say 50 years since the designated hitter was introduced?
You have one of the most dynamic players, not only just in baseball, Hank, but in all of sports. And the average person probably does not realize what he's doing. It's now maybe part of that
else is terrible?
In LA, but
look at his teammate, Mike Trout. What kind of publicity has he been getting?
Yeah.
They've done a terrible job marketing the game.
It's terrible, and yeah, good old Rob Manfred. That Chiron cannot be.
And he has the audacity to say, "Oh, you should do a better job marketing yourself." No, how about you market the game?
Yeah, we know, Rob. We know.
Yeah.
But let's switch gears here. Let's take a nice deep breath. And let's get to the NBA. And boy, I'm gonna go steam off against that. Speaking of commissioners, I'm gonna be doing a Monty moment on this later on in the week. But Adam Silver was out talking about the concern about the players, the NBA players, the stars, really specifically, not participating in a full complement of games. I mean, you saw how many of these. I mean, if you look at the stats this season, you see the big name players like Stephen Curry, and we can run down the list. Kevin Durant, LeBron, Anthony Davis. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I thought our buddies over at Empty the Bench made a great point about this on their show Saturday. So go check that out. As the play-in tournament starts tonight, and you see all these other players, they're missing games, whether they're hurt or they're taking these so-called rest or maintenance days. It is a concern. It is a problem, Hank, for me for sure. And one of the proposals that I think they should really – there's two things they could do about this, in my opinion, that would fix this. And I know one of them they're not going to do. So let me just get that out of the way. I'm going to say it anyway. If you think the baseball season needs to be shorter, the basketball season needs to be cut down from 82 games. I would cut it down to a 72-game season. And, of course, what the argument's going to be is, we're going to lose money that way. Well, if your players are taking rest or maintenance days and not playing on the second half of back-to-back, so they're just taking the day off in general, well, it doesn't help the sport. What if you going to a game, you spend a ton of money going to the game, like we said, parking, concessions, actual ticket prices. And what if you're a young fan going to the game to see a star player, and that star player is not playing because, I got to have a rest day? Not a good look. So it's a problem. I feel like the players and the commissioner in this case with Silver, I think the NBA has the best, but this to me is a big problem.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like if you're really that worried about losing money, maybe think about the fact that your players are like even taking days off to begin with. I think that really tells you all you need to know. Does it not?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I don't think we'll be seeing any more rest days for the rest of this season, at least as the play-in tournament gets going tonight. Nets and Cavaliers. Nets are such a tough team to figure out. I mean, they finally got Kyrie back to playing every day because of the restrictions that were lifted. But the Cavaliers, they are a young, up-and-coming team. They had a very good season. I mean, they faded down the stretch a lot due to injury. And we've already found out that Jared Allen, the former Nets, not going to play tonight. But the Nets, to me, are starting to figure this out. I mean, you saw last week against my Knicks, as the Knicks blow yet another double-digit late lead against the Brooklyn Nets. And, yeah, I'm mad not because we lost to the Nets again. It's because the Knicks yet again blew another big double-digit lead, which we'll get to the Knicks post-mortem in just a moment. But I think the Nets are going to win this because I think they're starting to find their stride. And I'd be very interested to see if they win this and they go on to take on, let's say, the Celtics or maybe a rematch against the Bucks down the road. Now that the Nets got Durant and Kyrie playing together again every game. And the Celtics now with Robert Williams still being out and the star power there with Jason Tatum. It'll be a cool thing to watch. I'll be locked into this. I think this play-in tournament is a cool structure, and I wouldn't be surprised if we even see hockey take this down the road. I don't think they will, but you saw hockey change up their thing a little bit. But the way this is situated, I think you look at the Nets here, Hank. I like their shot tonight against the Cavs.
Yeah, I agree. If you have a healthy Kevin Durant on your side, and with Kyrie being able to play a home game, I think they're in good shape. Definitely give me the Nets. But I do have to take my hat off to the Cavaliers. It's their first above 500 season without LeBron James. Fun fact, since 1998. So good for them. It looks like that team might be on the rise. I hope they can get themselves together and within a few years, but I don't think it's their time yet.
We got to get that trademarked on this show. Fun fact with Hank and Dictor, because Hank does provide those. So that could be a little something we do throughout. So stay tuned on that. But yes, Hank will provide the fun fact. But this whole play-in tournament stuff is fun. You got the Cavs and the Nets starting tonight, followed by the Clippers and the Timberwolves. And how about the Timberwolves? What they've done this year, as well with Karl Anthony Towns and stuff. And they take on a Clippers team that had, Paul George out for a while. Tomorrow you've got the Hornets and Hawks, the Spurs and the Pelicans. And then it's tricky because what happens here, so the winners of those last two games, the Charlotte, Atlanta, and Spur and Pelican game, they will take on the winner of game 3, which would be Charlotte and Atlanta, would take on the loser of the Cavs and Nets. And then the winner of the Spurs and Pelicans will take on the loser of the Clippers and the T-Wolves later on in the week. That would be on, what is that? That would be Friday, the 15th. That's when they would meet up. And then the playoffs officially get started on Saturday. So this whole play-in tournament stuff, pretty cool. Maybe it's a little bit of confusion, but I do think the Nets win tonight and they at least keep the New York angle going. Before we get to the Knicks, Hank, and I'll give you a little post-mortem on them, I want to spend a couple of seconds here on the Lakers because they fired Frank Vogel after a disappointing season. And I tell you, I feel terrible for Vogel because I said this before the season. This Lakers roster was so poorly constructed. And the fact that he takes the hit for this is just terrible.
He got scapegoated big time.
Absolutely, he did. Now, look, LeBron, he was hurt. I said before the season, you get 60 games out of LeBron this year. You sign up for that right now. He played less than that. Anthony Davis, probably one of your younger players, one of your younger star players. He was hurt. You had Russell Westbrook, who probably is more of a headache than Julius Randle was the Knicks year, and that's saying something. Look at what he had. You had all these other guys that were aging on there. They're one of the oldest teams in basketball. It doesn't work like that in the NBA. This is a young man's game. Yeah, you like the veteran presence maybe as a bench player. The Knicks are trying that with Derrick Rose. It didn't work out because he was hurt. But you can't construct a roster like the way the Lakers did and think you're going to be successful. I mean, remember, look what Vogel did his last couple of years. The Lakers won the championship in the bubble. They were in it again last year. And then this year, they fell apart because pretty much their two players they were banking on the most were LeBron. And look, when LeBron plays, he's effective, but he's up there in age too. You have to understand this with LeBron, and you have to take the hate out for just a second because what he's done is remarkable. And take all the other antics off the court for just a moment. LeBron has pretty much played an extra couple of seasons worth of games in the postseason because he always seems to make it, whether it was with the Cavs or when he went to the Heat or back with Cleveland, now in LA. He's played pretty much a couple of extra seasons worth of postseason games. That adds on to it. And then also, you've had the COVID year, which was interrupted, and then you had a very quick turnaround, and then you had another quick turnaround this year because of the whole COVID angle. And I don't want to hear that as a reason why you have all these rest or maintenance days. This has been going on for years now. It's getting worse, but this has always been happening. There needs to be a fix to that. But, yeah, for Frank Vogel to take the hit in all this is just – it's awful. And let's be honest, Vogel – teams that are eliminated from the playoffs will interview him tomorrow and sign him if they could. He will be off the market that quick.
Oh, that's pretty much a given. I think he's one of the few coaches that literally wanted to put his foot down and stand up for LeBron this year. Because when you look at other coaches he's played for, that doesn't happen. I mean, he got David Blatt fired, and this was it. And when he got him fired, the Cavaliers were already in first place. And if you look at the Lakers, yes, as much as I look at LeBron in a weird way with regards to the Lakers. Yes, he's pretty much the guy that's tried to keep him afloat, but at the same time, who was the one that insisted on getting Russell Westbrook as his teammate instead of say, what was it, DeMar DeRozan?
DeMar DeRozan, yep.
That was LeBron.
That was LeBron.
Magic Johnson even said that the Lakers wanted to get those guys, but it was LeBron who stepped in, overruled them, and told them to go get Russell Westbrook, which I could have told you before the season was a major, major disaster. In fact, if I'm going to be honest with you, I've been very anti-Russell Westbrook since maybe 2015, 2016. I can't remember what year it was. There was the year where Kevin Durant was wide open and he just chucked the 3-pointer. That has never gotten out of my mind. And I've seen him do that time and time again with the Thunder, with the Rockets, and now with the Lakers. And you know what? In a way, though, in a weird way, I kind of feel bad for Russell Westbrook because LeBron kind of screwed him too. I'm living proof that you can both feel bad for like be sympathetic to Russell Westbrook, but also like realize that he's not that good. But yeah, at the same, like I said, LeBron's the real reason that the Lakers went as badly as they did, and he's a guy that is very tough to play for. Like if you ask any young player on the Lakers, like they had like LeBron like chewed them out like viciously. Like it was ridiculous. Like I mean, don't get me wrong, Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant had their moments of conflict, but they never asked players to do things that they weren't capable of. LeBron just like is straight up one of the worst teammates. And if you look at the numbers of everybody who's played with LeBron, they have actually gotten worse with him than without him.
And you know what? LeBron's going to, as much as they don't want to tell you, LeBron is going to have an impact on who the next head coach of the Lakers is going to be. You've already seen.
There's no question. He's the GM, the coach. He's got so many hats.
I made the point. I think you can make LeBron the coach, make him a player coach. Why not? I mean, now
make like Bill Russell. Why not?
Yeah. Now you've seen a couple of stories come out in the past few days. One from Shams Charania saying that possibly Nick Nurse could be looked at as a possibility out there. And then there's another report today from Sam and Mick from the Athletics saying that LeBron would be very enthused by the prospect of Mark Jackson. Yes, that Mark Jackson to come out of the broadcast booth and be the coach. Now, if you remember, Jackson did coach the Warriors from 2011 to 2014, but that's almost a generation ago. It's 9 years, and the game has changed so much in that short amount of time too.
Well, here's the other thing, Mark Jackson. Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. LeBron is going to have a say. They could deny that all they want. That's why, look, if you're going to go down that road, make LeBron a player coach at this point. Why not? But, yeah, no, the way that team was poorly constructed with the age and stuff, and then, you have, AD go down, bringing in a Carmelo Anthony who's really going to be more of just a scoring guy at this point in his career. That roster just from day one did not really work out. And maybe the only thing the Lakers also had going for them is it has looked like the power of basketball, which used to be all Western Conference and very little Eastern Conference, has flipped. And now you've got a lot of talk in the Eastern Conference as well. I mean, you look at the East and you could make the case for 4, 5, 6 teams getting out of the East this year. While in the West, you're looking at probably Phoenix or somebody like that to get out of the West as well. So we'll see what happens there. One thing to watch for real quick as the playoffs do start, and we'll obviously have a lot more on this next week. We're efforting a basketball guest for the show next week, so stay tuned for that. Mm-hmm. One series to watch is actually, in my opinion, the Mavericks, because Luka Doncic has a left calf strain and he's questionable for his series. So that's a big deal. Doncic is an unbelievable player, so we'll have to see what happens there with Luka. But let me spend a couple of seconds here. Do a little Knicks post-mortem as me being the resident Knicks fan.
Yours, buddy.
Well, look, this is a disappointing year. Don't get me wrong. I said now before the season, did I think the Knicks were as good as they were last year? No. Did I think they were going to be as bad as like they played in the Hawks series? I didn't think they were going to be that bad. This is a disappointment, though, because this is a team that, that we thought had a very good, not a star, but a very good player in Julius Randle. Some pretty good young talent with Barrett, with Quickly, and a coach that you actually did trust in Thibodeau. And you look at the way this year has been, and really I can point to one moment this season where the Knicks season just never recovered from. Well, there's actually a few things. Number one, the number of blown leads that they had up double digits late, you can't overcome. They did it to the Nets a couple of times. I mean, I've lost count how many times this season they blew leads. I mean, the game against the Nets, the game that they broadcast on ESPN celebrating the 75th anniversary. I went to bed. They were up by 18 in the third quarter. I felt comfortable. I'm like, all right, you know what? I got to get up early. I'll watch. I'll see what happens. And then the turnaround in that second half in the fourth quarter, you look at it, it's like, come on, again. And so the blown leads, not being able to close out games. But the biggest point of this season, and I think the biggest mistake that Thibodeau made, besides not playing the young guys enough into the last 10 games of the season when Randall was out, was not benching Julius Randle the day that he gave the thumbs down sign to the fans. Because if you are Thibodeau and you are the head coach of this team, you needed to make a statement there and say that is not acceptable. And not saying it post-game or not thinking it or blurting it out afterwards. You need to prove it. And you needed to bench Randle after that moment. And I feel like the Knicks never recovered from that. Julius Randle was not the same player for whatever reason it was. He was not the same player. They banked way too much on Derrick Rose, who missed a very big chunk of the season. And Rose is going to be back because they gave him a 3-year deal. Derrick Rose is a veteran presence as a bench player is good for this team. I feel like every team could use a very good veteran player. But the disappointing year from Julius Randle and the fact that you did not play your young players enough until the last couple of weeks of the season was disappointing. Now, look, you saw RJ Barrett. He took the next step. You saw Quigley. You saw Obi Toppin. You've seen guys, even that Jericho Sims guy who you saw late in the season, he even showed you a little something. They've got Mitchell Robinson. This team's got young players that can produce. But one of the things that they are lacking, and they are things they've been lacking for a very long time, a consistent superstar and a damn point guard. How many years do I need to ask for the Knicks to get a point guard on this team? I'm not talking about Derrick Rose, who can't stay healthy. Derrick Rose is a bench player, as a veteran leader. That's fine. He's not your everyday point guard. We have been looking for a point guard, I would say, since Charlie Ward. That's
Charlie
Ward.
Good Lord.
Yes, that Charlie Ward, the Heisman Charlie Ward. I'm still waiting for that point guard. Not Jason Kidd past his prime, not Jeremy Lin, whose insanity lasted 17 games. A legitimate point guard and a star. Stars don't want to. The thing is, stars don't want to come to the Knicks, and that's what's so sad. Kevin Durant went to Brooklyn. Not that Kevin Durant was going to work. Kyrie Irving went to Brooklyn. That's fine. He can stay in Brooklyn. I never wanted Kyrie Irving. He can stay there and give the Nets the headache that he gives a lot of teams. We need a star, and we need a point guard. I think the coach is fine. Look, I thought Thibodeau was going to be fired the way that things were transpiring. You cannot keep changing the coach every 2 years and think you're going to be successful. You don't see it in football. You don't see it really in a lot of sports.
I've lost track of how many head coaches the Knicks have had in my lifetime because it's a lot. And I think the longest tenured, unless we count Van Gundy, it might be Woodson. I could be wrong. It might be Woodson or Thibodeau. That's sad.
It's a lot, man, it's so much. But I will say, unlike years past, I think the Knicks have a direction here. They've got young talent, but I mean, they've got to get a star, and Randall's got to bounce back. I mean, remember, his big contract is not even kicked in yet. So for all those who want to trade Randall and cut their losses, I mean, his big contract he's going to be on this team. But, I mean, you've got to get, some other talent to work because it's just not enough. It could be enough to make the playoffs, but now you've got an Eastern Conference that's several teams deep now. Look at the Cavaliers. Look at them. They're up and coming right now, too. So the Cavaliers, who in years past without LeBron were like a gimme now, they aren't. So you've got a lot of teams in this Eastern Conference now you're going to have to contend with for the next several years. But the Knicks have up-and-coming talent. So I think they're trending. I think that, last year was a nice year. This year was a disappointment. But you see signs that, the Knicks can make it back to the playoffs next year. But it was so tough this year with all the big blown leads that they had. They win half of those games. Maybe it's different. But to end up under 500 and missing the playoffs like the way that was this year, disappointing. But a team that's not disappointing that plays in Madison Square Garden, Hank, are the New York Rangers.
You're damn right.
You hear that whole – I could just hear that goal horn playing in my head right now. Oh, it's the best goal horn in hockey. Yeah, I'm going to be a little biased in saying that. It is.
You're not wrong, though.
And it's funny because you want to compare the Knicks and the Rangers. Look, James Dolan stays away from the Rangers. He lets Glenn Sather and Chris Drury and everybody do what they need to do, and he stays.
Well, okay, I wouldn't say that's entirely true because we did have Jeff Gorton and John Davidson as the president at the end of the 2021 season. He fired both of them, but he was smart to hire Chris Drury because Chris Drury was with the Rangers for a long time as an assistant. He knew the ins and outs. Remember, this guy was being offered like GM jobs like everywhere, but The fact that he stayed and he knew like how the Rangers were, and the fact that James Dolan trusted him was not a bad thing at all. I will say that. But you're right. For the most part, James Dolan has stayed away from the Rangers.
Now, one of the things that has benefited the Rangers in this run, that now this consistent run for them, which has been the majority of the last 18 seasons, I would say, going back 18 years, going back to 2004, 2005, when they had that lockout. That lockout was one of the reasons why the Rangers were able to change the way they were, because we don't want to go back to harken back to the pre-lockout Rangers of the early 2000s. But you know what, that lockout forced the Rangers to be, fiscally responsible, financially responsible, go in a different direction, and they have been, despite the fact that they've not won a Stanley Cup in this stretch, they have been one of the more consistent teams in hockey. They make the playoffs just about every season. Yes, they had a little bit of a transpiring period recently, but they were able to, make the playoffs every year. And let's look at what's happened here. They have gone from, one goaltender in Henrik Lundqvist, who was unbelievable, and then they go to Igor. How many teams can you say in hockey are able to replace a Henrik Lundqvist type with another, what looks like almost Vezina Trophy candidate in Igor Shesterkin?
And let me give you this too. Let me give you his numbers on the season. He has a .935 save percentage. His goal GAA is like a shade over 2. Those are incredible numbers. And I don't remember Henrik having a save percentage that's high. That's how great his season has been. And it's really, I find it hard to believe that he's only like really had 4 shutouts. But then again, you realize most of the games he's had, he'll give up like that one goal either really early or really late. But then you don't even remember that he gave up a goal, because the Rangers, like by the end, figured it out, and he was just like so dominant.
Lundqvist, I don't believe, ever had a 2.07 goals against average. But what was crazy about Lundqvist was, and I remember I did a segment about this back when I was on Long Island at a college station. Lundqvist's regular season and postseason numbers were almost identical. And it's almost like in baseball, the pitcher gives up 2 runs and loses 2-1. That seemed to be the case with Lundqvist all the time in the playoffs. He would give up 1 or 2 goals, and that would be 1 or 2 too many. But yeah, so he was always, his regular season and postseason numbers are almost identical. And that's what we'll have to see now with Shesterkin, as the Rangers have officially made the playoffs. They've got 100 points, which I don't think any of us in our wildest dreams would ever thought that this team. Well, they still got 9 games to go, which is crazy.
Well, let me put it to you this way. I knew they were going to go to the playoffs before the season. Like, I know there were some people that were kind of worried after they fired John Davidson and Jeff Gorton, and then fired David Quinn, which the latter of which was a necessary move. I thought he was decent for like maybe his first or second year, but he was never going to be the long-term coach. But with that being said, when you look at what happened the year before, like, almost everything that could have gone wrong for the Rangers during that stretch did go wrong. And that was a 48-game season that was shortened because of the crazy ending of the 2020 season, if you recall. Like, they were without Panarin for that stretch. They were without Igor for certain stretches. And not to mention, this was a young team that their only opponents were essentially division rivals. Like, that was literally they were not in a position like to succeed. And even then, of all the teams that didn't even make the playoffs, the Rangers might have been the best. And ironically, they had more points in the regular season than the team that did go to the finals. That would be the Montreal Canadiens. So I think last year was just a weird season. A lot of things happened in and out of their control. So I would call that like a fluke. But then when they hired Gerard Gallant, that was one of the first steps they had to becoming a better team. This is a guy who, if you look at everywhere he's coached, Florida Panthers, Vegas Golden Knights, he has gotten pretty much the most out of whatever talent he has had. I mean, remember, he led the Vegas Golden Knights, the expansion team, to the Stanley Cup final. That was a pretty impressive feat in and of itself. And then you look at the moves that Drury made. I mean, you can make a case that the trading Buchnevich was a mistake, but at the end of the day, you were never going to sign that guy. He was a third line winger. Overpaying that guy a lot of money would have been bad. But he got Barclay Goodrow. Now, again, you could argue that the figure was too much, but he has done nothing but have a positive influence on the guys in the locker. He has the A on his sweater for a reason. And he also brings some veteran experience. Remember, he won the previous 2 cups with Tampa Bay Lightning. Yep. Getting Ryan Reeves was another good move. I mean, look, he wasn't going to get into a fight every day like most Ranger fans wanted to, but what he has provided was leadership, and he's another guy who has positive energy every single game. He might not be playing every game, but like when he doesn't play, he totally gets that it's Gallant's decision, but he always has a positive. All the young guys love Ryan Reeves. In fact, Ryan Reeves happens to be one of my favorite players as well. And then you look at the talent level that the Rangers have. Johnny, are you ready for another fun fact?
Yes.
So you mentioned Henrik Lundqvist's career. Let's take a look at specifically his peak from, say, 2011, 2012 until, say, the 2016-17 season, because that was the last true playoff season that the Rangers had. Do you know how many 70-point skaters the Rangers had during any of those seasons?
It wasn't many, right?
1. Care to guess who that was?
Trying to think off the top of my head who it would have been.
It might not be the first name that you think of, I'll tell you that.
Oh, I like that. Hank Fun Facts. I like that. Yeah, you know what? I'll probably remember his name when you tell me, but go ahead.
Marion Gabriel.
Marion Gabriel, yeah.
He had a 76-point season,
and that was
in 2011-2012. He had 40 goals.
That was going to be his first year, because I know he had his first year was great, and then he tailed off a little, but then he
the year afterward he got traded. He got traded to the Blue Jackets for Brassard and John Moore,
which actually ended up working out all right for the Rangers too.
Yeah, no, Brassard was a good player during their cup runs, but in any event, Gabriel was the only player that had a 70-point season. And there have been a lot of other guys who were former All-Stars. Rick Nash, in particular, you would have thought may have been him, but he had like maybe 1 or 2 good seasons, but then he kind of tailed off after that contract.
And you know what? And just going to where you're going with that, Hank, I mean, that's one of the things you like with this team is Kreider's having a career year scoring wise. They've got Artemi Panarin, who's right up there in points, the league leader in points, and he's not really scoring this year.
Anyways, what I was going to say with that fun fact.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that Henrik only had 1 70-point player during those particular seasons where the Rangers were at their peak of competing. This team has 3, but will get a 4th 70-point score as well.
Yes.
This season alone, 4. Chris Kreider, as you mentioned, who has 49 goals. He could probably get his 50th tonight. If he gets his 50th, can you imagine how crazy the Garden's going to go?
And
Mika's advantage out is the other one. He had a rough start to the season, but then in the second half, he's been absolutely on fire. I mean, look, there's a reason we have been calling him Mika March, because that's the month he always seems to deliver. And even afterward, he still continued his good point and goal scoring pace. And then, not to mention, you have Panarin, who, as you said, he's not high with the goals, but like he's getting an assist like almost every game. And lately, he's had a bit of a hot streak with goals. He just got his 20th, and I believe his point total is at like 84. Johnny, you remember what I told you on a review and preview when you were with me and I talked about the Rangers' hot start or the Rangers stretch? If this guy goes hot during the playoffs, watch out. And then the one guy who isn't there yet is Adam Fox, who he may have tailed off a bit, like after like missing a couple games of the injury, but still 67 points at this point in the season. I would have signed up for that anyways. And like there's only like 2 or 3 defensemen who have more points than him. And that's probably Roman Josi and Kel Makar of the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, and even look at the deadline move they made getting for Toronto, and look how great he's been since he's come over here. And not bad. I mean, he brought him in for depth, and he's definitely provided that depth. Yeah.
Andrew Copp too. No, and here's the crazy thing about
and you had said that, and I'm sorry, but you had said that too also was, you didn't think the Rangers were going to maybe get the big move, but they were going to add depth moves without, mortgaging their future. And that's something that in years past they've actually tried to make the big move.
That's a major win.
Yeah, and they've made a depth move, and the depth move has been working.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, it's really hard for me to complain about a lot of the moves that Chris Drury has made. He has definitely given them more depth, and when you have the depth that they have with the elite players that I just mentioned, your Adam Foxes and your Artemi Panarins, who, by the way, those guys don't grow on trees.
No.
That's why I think the Rangers could potentially make a deep run in the playoffs. Now, look, before you think I'm being too homerish and before you think I'm getting a little too excited, I'm not telling you they're going to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Far from it. Because look at how the Eastern Conference is. You got an absolute bloodbath.
Yeah.
Carolina Hurricanes, I mean, there's a reason that I said Carolina was going to be one of the teams that I feared in the Eastern Conference going into the season. Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, dangerous team. Florida Panthers, that's one of the best teams. Actually, really both Florida teams for that matter, because you have the Lightning coming off back-to-back Stanley Cups. Florida Panthers, they have Barkov, and they improved their team with the Claude Giroux trade. By the way, side note, they fleeced the Flyers on that trade, but I don't think any of us are complaining about that.
Yeah.
And then, not to mention, the Boston Bruins had a really good second half. They're a team that could be an absolute pain, but those are teams that you'd probably worry about. Some of the teams I mentioned you might be worrying about in the first round if the Rangers clinch first. But let's take a look at the division, because then you got the Pittsburgh Penguins, who for a good portion of the season, they were hot. They won 22 of 26 games. You're probably going to play them in the first round, but then they kind of tailed off. And when the Rangers played them, other than that one game they lost, and even then, there was a questionable call that really kind of swung the game in Pittsburgh's favor. The Rangers have clearly been the better team against the Penguins in every single game they played. And you look at the last game, like every time the Penguins have tried to get into a fight, like the Rangers have shown that they are not a team you really want to be dealing with. They can out-physical the Penguins, and that's why I would like my chances if I'm playing the Pittsburgh Penguins in the first round. But still, with that being said, if we have to deal with them, like throw the regular season games out there.
I was going to say you have to throw it out because, you'll get Crosby and Malkin back for that. They'll both be together, and they are very feisty and very agitating team. And you saw Malkin actually just got suspended for 4 games. So that could affect
which was the correct ruling. Like
yes.
His hit was pretty dirty, and it's pretty rare that George Parros usually gets a ruling like that right. But
yeah,
it is what it is. And yeah, I do agree. Even with the games that we played in the regular season, the Penguins are still a threat. Crosby and Malkin are still pretty good, but at the same time, another thing to consider about the Penguins is they haven't won a first round series in 3 to 4 years. So they have a little bit of a monkey on their back. And not to mention, you look at the last 3 times that they've been in the playoffs, they lost 2 of those 3 years to an Islander team that probably wouldn't have made a deep run. At least the second time they played the Islanders was the year they probably wouldn't have made a deep run any other year. And then they lost the preliminary round to a Montreal Canadiens team that probably wouldn't have made the playoffs in a normal year. So definitely question marks for them regarding their playoffs, but it should be interesting to see how the Rangers do against them, assuming that's how the season plays out. But again, they're tied with Carolina. Anything can really happen. These last 8 games will probably determine a lot going forward.
It's let me tell you, if you're not the biggest hockey fan in the world, folks, you definitely have to check this out because this is quite a team, and the Stanley Cup playoffs are always fun. And if there's anything we've learned as Ranger fans, look, you just get in and you never know because they've been there as a number 1 seed, and if you're not knocked out, they've just gotten in and they've made a deep run. Hank said it. I mean, once you get to the Stanley Cup playoffs, you almost could throw everything out the window and just start over and see what happens. That's sometimes the joy about it. And
there's one other thing about the Rangers that gives me hope that I didn't quite mention, but sort of glossed over. Yep. I talked about Igor Shesterkin having a historic season, pretty much when you consider the long line of great goalies that the Rangers had.
Yes.
Most of these playoff games are low scoring. If the Rangers steal a game or 2 or lose a series, but like win 1 or 2 games, I think we know who probably will be the reason for that. That's Igor.
Yeah. And like I said, they've been in Hank was in almost every year that he was with the Rangers, and his postseason numbers and his regular season numbers are almost identical. So it could be like that again too. But like you said, I think this team's a little different because they're very deep. They're all there together. They've got a legitimate goal scorer in Kreider and other guys too. And look, they're getting production up and down this team, and that's sometimes the sign of destiny. I mean, you saw it when they went to the Cup Finals, and that game against that clinching game against the Canadiens. It was Dominic Moore, who was a third or fourth line guy scoring the game-winning goal.
May 29th, 2014. I remember that very well. Absolutely,
that was actually one of my final moments up in New York before I moved down here to South Carolina. But I always pay attention to it. It always is
I'll never
Best
forget
place.
that too, because when he scored that goal and when the Rangers like clinched their trip to the Stanley Cup, I'm pretty sure I woke up like one or two people in my house. It was that exciting.
Oh yeah, but it's not like you get that every day. And look, that's probably been in your fandom, knowing the teams that you root for, Hank. That's probably been the best moment in the last 10 years. Think
That
about it,
one's
right?
right up there with the Derek Stepan Game 7 overtime goal against the Capitals a year later.
That too. Yep, that as well. I mean, they've had, the Rangers have had a lot of magical moments in the playoffs. And again, even though they haven't won the Stanley Cup since 1994, I mean, they are in it every year pretty much, and they do make deep runs. And look, you never know, but
And look at how New York City gets whenever the Rangers are in.
Let me tell you, if you have never been in New York City when the Rangers have made a deep run in the playoffs, it is awesome. Just like it would be awesome if the Knicks could ever get to that point again.
Listen, I may not be as big a Knicks fan as you are, but if they ever won a finals, I would be pretty damn happy, and I would be happy for pretty much you, my buddy Paul Lombardi, host of the 3&D on Review and Preview. I think you and him would be right up there with being excited if the Knicks ever won a finals in a lifetime.
I don't know if you remember, but the one good year the Knicks have had in the 21st century, and I'm not counting that series against the Nets when they were another 500 team, or even the series against the Hawks, but that team that won 54 games that went to the second round against the Celtics, which they could have made a deep run if it wasn't for J.R. Smith committing that technical foul and suspended.
I remember that.
If that wasn't for that, that would have been the kind of team that could have made a very deep run, and they have really never recovered from that. So
I remember that too. I don't know if they would have beaten the Miami Heat, but I think they could have sent that team to a 7th game.
Would have been fun, that's for sure. But Hank, we got a couple of minutes left here before we have to go, because I know you have to go to the Ranger game, so I want to send you out there, make sure you don't get there late for the game tonight. Big game tonight against the Panthers. So, but real quick before we go, we have to talk a couple seconds here about Tiger Woods and the Masters. I don't know how much of it you got a chance to watch, but I was actually more into the Masters than opening day, and my obvious reasons behind that. But
yep, I'm aware.
Look, I didn't think Tiger was going to have a great 4 rounds, and he had a pretty good opening round. He had an okay second round, and then he struggled down the stretch. But like I said in my ETB Sportsman I did last week, Tiger could have bogeyed every hole, and it still would have been an unbelievable thing to watch. And I can only think of one other unbelievable story comeback like this, and that was Alex Smith. But even like this, like an individual sport as golf is, to see him back out on the course and, even doing all right in his opening round, one of the greatest comeback, most unbelievable thing I've ever witnessed in my sports life. And obviously it didn't turn out well, but it was still cool to see him back out there on the course. And then if you're a golf fan, you see now that Scotty Scheffler has been unbelievable. He's won 4 out of 6 events that he's played in this year. He's been quick transition to world number 1. I guess now we'll have to see how Tiger responds from this, and if he plays in the next major and goes on from there. But that was an unbelievable thing to witness. I mean, the event itself wasn't really that dramatic. I mean, I think the final day, the other great moment was seeing the chip-ins from the bunker on 18 for McIlroy, and but yeah, no, I mean, it was great to see him back out on the course. I just don't know really where we go from here now, but that was a pretty cool thing. I had to spend a couple of seconds on that, but always in a major tournament, that's pretty cool to see. And look, you saw the crowds. I mean, look at the crowds that were at Augusta when Tiger was even practicing. I mean, there really is no other figure in sports like Tiger Woods that could draw like this. I mean, you think about it in all the other sports, who really else is out there like that? LeBron,
yeah, no, he's one of the greatest players in the history of the PGA. Like, granted, like, I'm not the biggest fan of him personally, and it's not because I'm not much of a golf fan. It's because of a certain incident that happened a while ago that I'm not really going to get into.
Of course.
But at the same time, the fact that he even made his return, I don't even care how he did. That's impressive. Like, especially because we, like, about a year ago at this time, we were like worried about like whether he would even be able to walk again too. Like, it's great stories like these that make us realize why we love sports now.
Absolutely. Like I said, I was hooked into that Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I mean, Sunday, seeing him with the red shirt on for Sunday, even though we knew we didn't really have a chance, was special. But part of the reason why we love sports. And things like that. Any moment a great moment, and good to see him back out there. And hopefully, the leg responds after 4 days on that tough course, walking it, and we see him in a major, and hopefully he wins one more of these things. But I you just don't know, because there aren't great golfers. I mean, Scheffler's been playing great, but there's a lot of good ones out there that'll give him a tough time. I mean, that's the thing, as dominant as Tiger was, you didn't really have you had Phil, you had a couple of other guys, but now the tour's got so many good young guys that are in it that it makes it that much tougher for him to go out there and win another major. But we'll see what happens. But that just about puts a nice little wrap on episode number 5 of Game On. Hank, I have to say that was fun. That was fast, and a lot of stuff. I mean, that was awesome. So I thank you for joining me again. Enjoy the Ranger game tonight. Enjoy all the hockey as we go down the stretch. The baseball, hopefully, Mets and Yankees keep us going. The basketball playoffs about to start. We got a lot to talk about in the coming weeks here on the show. And of course, folks, we are presented by Knack. Make sure when you go purchase your Knack bag online, you use the code GAME at checkout, and you will get a free TSA-approved lock for that bag. And let me tell you, those bags are awesome. In fact, I got stuff in there right now, which is why I can't even bring it out right now. But it is a great bag to have, and we're happy to have them on board, and happy that this podcast network is growing between this show, between Empty the Bench, Beyond the Bench, Inside the Numbers. I mean, we've got so many shows, Living Life, Here Now the News, so many great shows. I might be able to have to spend another 20 minutes on that, and I'm going to hear it if we do spend another 20 minutes. So, keep it locked in here too. Follow us on Twitter at GameOnETB, Facebook.com/GameOnETB. Also on Instagram, GameOn_ETB. You can also find our accounts as well, and also the ETB network for all your shows and for all the upcoming shows as well. Also on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you know when we're going to be on, and the next Empty the Bench podcast network show as well. So Hank, thanks again. Great show as always. Great to have you aboard. And
hey,
folks,
always a pleasure, Johnny. LGR.
Absolutely. LGR and LGY for sure. But thanks a lot, folks, for joining us. Keep it tuned in here to the Empty the Bench podcast network for all your latest shows. And we will see you for episode 6 of Game On next week.